All right. Hi. Good morning, everybody. My name is Greg Smithwick. As you know, I'm from SolocalPasco, and which feed are we on? Did we decide? So this is the Coffee on the Dock feed. I was just talking about Corey's program, Coffee on the Dock, and the super genius idea of making a show where you get paid to sit on your dock and drink coffee and play music with people. Let me a little background here. I had Josh McCart on as a guest on my show a few weeks ago. Twice, actually. We talked about the Ridge Road Extension Project. It's a topic of much discussion. There's a lot of excitement about it. There's a lot of positive feeling about the idea of extending Ridge Road out from its intersection at Moonlake Road out to the Veterans Expressway and then eventually to US 41. And I like projects that we're excited about. However, there are some environmental concerns and some questions that need to be asked. Josh composed a really good set of questions and asked if it was possible to facilitate some sort of a briefing or meeting to ask those questions. Commissioner Mike Wells, County Commissioner Mike Wells, and I had to talk about that. Mike set this briefing in motion, and unfortunately neither Commissioner Wells nor Josh McCart could be here today. I'll say who Josh is. Josh is an educator at the Energy and Marine Center in Port Richey. All Pasco County school children spend at least one day there during their school career, so there's literally thousands of people that will see this video who will go, I know Josh, I went through there when he was a teacher there. Josh and I sat down in the Saranova tract and did a live 15-minute thing a couple weeks ago, and he expressed what those concerns were. And we thought the important thing was to actually have the county answer those questions. I practice a bit of advocacy journalism, so I have a position on this project, and I kind of lean towards no. And I'm happy to hear information that would change my mind. And I am a changeable-minded person. That's that's just part of my nature. And so we invited, we asked Mike Wells for a meeting. Mike presented us with the county administrator, and I'm humbled because I didn't think this was actually going to happen. So here I am, a podcaster, getting to interview our county administrator about a really important project for Pasco County. There is a lot of state and even national political weight behind this, and that makes me cautious. Right, I want to make sure that the consideration isn't just economic; that it's environmental and human dignity as well. So, thank you for meeting with me today.
My pleasure.
All right. So I have the mic on the table here. For those of you watching, Josh McCart is joining us by phone, so as not to get in trouble with his spouse. He's on a trip and taking the time to be with us this morning. Good morning, Josh.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate the opportunity that Michelle and the county has provided us to get some answers to some important questions here today.
Okay. Would you like to maybe, Michelle, make an opening statement for us?
Sure. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak about this project. This is a project that has both its proponents and its detractors, and I appreciate everyone's perspective on this. I also have a perspective. I started in Pasco County in 1993 as the County Emergency Management Director, and it was my job to plan for the safe evacuation of Pasco County's residents who live on the beautiful West Coast, but who are in danger in case of a hurricane. And so I've been involved in this project since the beginning from the public safety aspect. The project does have two different purposes in its purpose statement for permitting. One is public safety hurricane evacuation, and one is improved east-west mobility. I have been the project manager for the project since 2005 and have been involved in the details of the permitting operation up until the time I became county administrator. And then I had to kind of let somebody else take project management on because I had other fish to fry.
No way.
But I have remained a really staunch proponent of the project. And I have a little PowerPoint that we took with us to Washington, D.C. last month that kind of summarizes some of the more salient details. I thought if it's okay that I would go through that very briefly with you. I don't know how that looks on a podcast, but we'll try to go through it just real quick because I think it tells what's important.
Well, we could always later put a link to if you have the PowerPoint online, we can put a link to it in the thread so people can access it.
We can do that. So the first page in the PowerPoint speaks to where Pasco County is in the state of Florida. We were briefing people in Washington, D.C. You guys know that. So that's not a big thing. But what is important is to know that we're 868 square miles. We're almost 500,000 population. We're the 12th largest population in Florida here in the Tampa Bay area, and Tampa Bay is the second largest. So we are growing, whether we like it or not. And we have an obligation to be prepared to safely accommodate that population growth. And that's a big part of what this is about. I mentioned that the project has two purposes. I'm not going to read this to you, but one of them is hurricane evacuation and one of them is east-west mobility. And instead of pointing at this map, I'm going to point at the big map behind me.
Perfect.
So this is Pasco County.
I'm so glad I brought the big map.
I'm glad you did too. It hangs in my office, in my conference room, because everything is geographic. When you think about it, everything that we're doing has a geographic relationship to a point in space. So here is the West Pasco area, and probably 270 to 300,000 of the population in Pasco County lives in West Pasco.
Far more than half of the
Far more than half of the population, although the south part, the central part of Pasco County is growing. This is where the population density is right now. So here is Current Ridge Road. And within 5 miles of Current Ridge Road are 178,000 people who have to evacuate in case of a major hurricane. Now, Pasco County only has, right now, 2 east-west roads. One, State Road 54, running along the southern border of the county, and one, State Road 52, running along the middle part of the county. What's important to notice is this large green space, which I know that Josh is very familiar with, which is the Starkey Wilderness Park and what is now known as the Saranova Preserve, and this large green space up here, which is known as the Crossbar Wellfield. Because of these locations, there are not a lot of options for east-west roads. So right now, Pasco County has 6 lanes on State Road 54. There are 6 lanes on State Road 52 currently to the Suncoast Parkway, planned to be 6 lane to 41, and someday 6 lane to I-75. The county's current transportation studies say we need 20 lanes of east-west capacity. But we are constrained to 6 lanes each on the 2 state roads. So that's 6 lanes here, 6 lanes here. That means that we're short 8 lanes of capacity.
We're just a little over halfway to the goal for east-west.
Right. So then if you add 4 lanes of capacity on Ridge Road, you're up to 16 lanes of capacity, but you're still 4 lanes short. And that's why we continue to also talk about an elevated State Road 54 or an alternative to State Road 54. So that's mobility. And when you look at the population here and the population that's growing here, and if you drive State Road 54 with any regularity, you know that we need to have an alternative route. If you drive State Road 52 with any regularity, you know that there are times when there are accidents that completely shut down the road. There was a tragic one just a couple of months ago where there is no alternative to detour traffic. Right. So that's the mobility piece. And then you add to that the evacuation piece. So here's these 200,000 plus residents who are at risk in case of a major hurricane. But they're not the only people we're planning for. We're also planning for the people who live south of us in Pinellas and Hillsborough County. Because when a major hurricane occurs, if the winds start to pick up before the evacuation population is finished, and they will because people wait till the last minute, the bridges close.
Right.
And so then everybody that's on the peninsula of Pinellas County has to come up here. So we actually anticipate about 1 million people evacuating through Pasco County in case of a hurricane.
I want to take a second and state that there's probably nobody working in our county that has more direct experience with what happens in a major hurricane than Michelle Baker. Michelle was the emergency coordinator in Dade County, Florida, Miami,
yes,
when Andrew hit in 1992. So, you know, a lot of ground truth experience with what people should do and what they actually do in the event of a major hurricane.
Well, even here in Hurricane Charlie, which some of your listeners might have been here in 2004, when Charlie was forecast to be a worst-case scenario for Pasco County, a Category 4 landfalling hurricane, there were people who had not evacuated.
Yeah.
They got lucky. Charlie turned at the last minute, but you can't always count on that luck. So we've got to accommodate this population coming out of the south end. When we plan evacuation transportation, if you think about this, it'll make just logic to you. We plan for right-hand turning movements. You don't want to turn left across opposing traffic when you're planning an evacuation. So the Pinellas County folks are going to come up and they're going to turn right. And Pasco County residents are going to go up and they're going to turn right. And they're going to go up and turn right. Well, there are not a lot of alternatives for that. There is no way that our evacuating population is going to be able to access State Road 54 because Pinellas County residents are going to be full on State Road 54. So all of our residents are going to be, at this point, channeled either to Ridge Road to Moon Lake to 52 or up to 52 or up to County Line Road. So when Ridge Road was envisioned, it was envisioned to be both mobility, connecting, as well as evacuation. And you know, this slide just shows the evacuation zones, which aren't on my big map, but it shows you that the evacuation areas, you know, red, orange, yellow, green, and purple here, go all the way over to Little Road. So, you know, this is where that 218,000 people come from, and 178,000 of them being within 5 miles of the Ridge Road extension.
So the blue circle represents the maximum
mile
density of people who would have to evacuate, correct?
Oh, the blue circle represents those people who are within 2 miles of Ridge Road extension, but
Gotcha.
everybody in the shaded
okay.
area is required to evacuate in case
you.
of a major hurricane.
Okay.
So then, I already said State Road 54 is going to be full of Pinellas County traffic, but State Road 54 also has a flooding problem,
right?
Which we have experienced multiple times, not even associated with hurricanes
even
necessarily.
Tropical Storm Debbie.
Tropical Storm Debbie caused it. The summer rains of 2015 caused flooding. And so because the Enclos River is in that vicinity, because that area is low, because the Enclos River is influenced by tides as well as rain, we have a flooding problem here, and we have the potential of this one of two major evacuation routes being shut down if we have a wet storm that's raining before the peak of the evacuation traffic is finished. So that's a problem. So those are the reasons why we think we need the road. Now let me speak to this from the opposite side, the concerns that people have about the environmental impact. And I would not label myself an environmentalist necessarily, but I'm environmentalist leaning.
Okay.
I helped create the Environmental Lands Acquisition Management Program. I managed the beginning of that under the Penny for Pasco. I believe in those principles, and I believe in that balance of Mother Nature versus growth. As the county administrator, I have an obligation to provide for both. The county was engaged and at the table when the Suncoast Parkway was originally being permitted. And I know your viewers won't be able to see this, but I'm going to show this to you, Greg. So this area that we now refer to as the Serranova Preserve is called that because at one time was the Serranova Development of Regional Impact. And there were over 6,000 homes approved. There were hundreds of acres approved for industrial and office and retail use. And at one time, the Suncoast Parkway was expected to swoop through the middle of it. And Ridge Road was going essentially along the alignment that Ridge Road is still planned to be. Together with the Turnpike Authority, who was permitting the Suncoast Parkway, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Florida Game Commission, and Pasco County, we coordinated to realign the Suncoast Parkway to go up the eastern border of the Serranova DRI, and to preserve this land as mitigation for the Suncoast Parkway. But in the partnering agreements, it was always recognized that Ridge Road still needed to occur. And so if you read the partnering documents that were executed that created the Serranova DRI, they say once Ridge Road gets a permit, Ridge Road can be through it. SwiftMud is going to give us the land that's necessary for it. The Turnpike Authority already built the overpass for it. You know, you drive on the Suncoast Parkway and there's those little dead-end lanes and you go up over the future extension of Ridge Road extension. So from my perspective, there was a road planned before there was a preserve created. Now, what the environmentalists will say to you, but that wasn't built, Michelle. That wasn't built, Greg. You know, it was in its natural state, and we recognize and appreciate that as well. And that is why the Ridge Road Extension is a limited access facility. It is designed to move people from west to east, not to have a million access points, not to create growth, but to serve the purposes that we have said. And in the Serranova Preserve, over the last couple of years, we have added. We originally started with 8 wildlife crossings under the road. We have added additional bridges, not just wildlife crossings, but additional bridges where we have reduced the impact to the wetlands and made the road more porous to wildlife to be able to transit. So we have worked really closely with all the federal permitting agencies in order to minimize the impact on the environment, while at the same time balancing the need for this evacuation road and for this mobility between the two areas.
Okay, Josh, were you trying to interject there, or is that just phone noise?
No, I'm just waiting to respond to.
Okay.
Everything, and I've got a lot of questions that I'd like to ask. I don't want to get too far ahead before I do have an opportunity to jump in, but if you guys wouldn't mind, I would like to address some of the stuff and concerns that
if you give me
Michelle had brought
2 more
up.
minutes, I'll just finish the quick presentation and we'll go to Q&A.
Okay.
Absolutely. So because of questions that have been raised, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers asked us to evaluate 17 different alternatives. And we have evaluated them with transportation models and hurricane evacuation models to determine what the best alternatives are. And Ridge Road Extension was determined to be the best alternative. So it's not we just picked it. We have also done a very detailed and sadly expensive and time-consuming study to prove that what we knew in the 90s was still true in terms of the best route. We are also working with the Corps on a very detailed, what are the next steps, what are the next steps. They are ensuring that we cross every T and dot every I, and it's been a very comprehensive and complicated and lengthy process. And so, we need this evacuation route. And this county needs a third east-west road. You mentioned at the beginning of your blog that you were concerned that politicians were getting involved, and that always makes you raise your eyebrows.
It does. It occurs to me that this is there's a lot of regulatory questions here that are becoming political questions, and it seems to me the trend is that we get away from regulation, and political expediency leads to things that maybe we compromise on that we shouldn't in a regulatory fashion. Except for that, after nearly 2 decades of permitting and working with the regulatory agencies, we think we are near to the finish line. And I think where Congressman Bilirakis, where Governor Scott, and where the Board of County Commissioners are coming from is 20 years of permitting, questions asked, questions answered. We have made significant modifications to the project. They see the need for the evacuation route. They see the need for the east-west, and what they are asking is that the Corps of Engineers expedite completion of the review. So they're not asking go build a road without going through the regulatory process. We have been through the regulatory process. We've been through the ringer of the regulatory process. What they're asking is finish it. It's not fair to the Pasco County residents who are at risk for a hurricane that they not have this evacuation route in place before they have to evacuate. It's not fair to the residents who are sitting in traffic on 54 that we not have this road. If they're going to say no, then say no. But if they're going to say yes, let's say yes. But we're not saying skip the regulatory process. We're not saying skip the review. We have been through very detailed review since we submitted this permit in 1999. Do you know there are a lot of folks that feel like our regulatory process at the state level has been compromised by this administration, that people who bring bad news to the governor environmentally tend to be marginalized and not listened to. So the concern then is that political pressure on regulatory bodies. We know that happens, and we know that it has a negative effect on those that want to protect the environment. So, but this road was permitted before Governor Scott was governor. I get that. By the state agencies. It was permitted in 2003 by the Water Management District. Let's let Josh in.
I would just like to add.
Nice and loud, please, Josh.
Terra Nova was purchased by DOT as mitigation for the East-West Expressway for the 205 acres that were destroyed by building that road. So mitigation in the state of Florida for wetlands is a net zero loss of wetlands. So we purchased this property with DOT, intending to preserve that property, but allowing for access to Bridge Road. Never guaranteed it or permitted it, just allowed for it to go through the permitting process. The permitting process is controlled by the Army Corps of Engineers. The Army Corps of Engineers has this jurisdiction under Section 404 of the Clean Water Act. And this dredging and filling of these wetlands needs to be mitigated that were lost for the East-West Expressway. The Terra Nova tract, yes, was planned to be a 6,000 acre or plotted home. That was back in the 80s. That time is come and gone. Many things change. What I would like to really address is some of the mobility questions that Michelle has brought up. Some of my concerns with the mobility questions is if this was truly an evacuation concern, State Road 52 would not just now be widening from Suncoast 241 to 6 lanes. There are alternative options. Michelle had mentioned that you want to make right turns in these emergency evacuation scenarios.
Michelle's having a hard time hearing you, Josh. Sorry. Well, I'm going to repeat what you said because I heard it pretty clearly. You expressed that left turn's bad when we talk about hurricane evacuation. Okay, go ahead, Josh.
Right turns are good. So my concern is, why not make Starkey Boulevard, Moon Lake, Cumulus, out to 52 a major north-south corridor that would alleviate traffic on the other two north-south corridors, being 19 and Little Road. That way, you can get people that are in this area, which is, I believe, 178,000 residents that live within 2 miles of Ridge Road, that could get out to 52. Also, with the Army Corps of Engineers, what they've always been asking for with the terms of an alternate path are other options. And Tower Road is another option that was mentioned. If you look at the LRTP plan of 2040, I believe they're calling for 22 lanes. So Michelle's referring to 20. Where are we getting these extra 2 lanes from in the future? How many times are we going to subdivide this park to make east-west corridors? Hudson Avenue, Denton Avenue are both only about 2 miles short of US 41, which would be another north-south corridor for people in the 52 area, between 52 and Ridge Road, that they could utilize to get to 41 and out of harm's way. So I'd ask, one of my first questions is, why not widen these north-south corridors to alleviate traffic on the east-west corridors? My second question is, why is Hudson Avenue and Denton Avenue not considered an alternate route that could be attached to the Suncoast? I know when the Suncoast was built, Ridge Road off-ramps were kind of built in place of always there being a possibility for that. But I believe that we could do that with some of the turnpike money for Hudson Avenue and Denton Avenue. I'd also ask, why in our county, when you drive down US 19 and you turn right onto County Line Road in Hernando and Pasco County, County Line Road, it's considered an evacuation route, but that is not mentioned to the Army Corps of Engineers. So that would be another question. Why is that not considered a part of our east-west mobility in the county?
All right, let's hold there.
So there was a lot of questions.
Tackle those, yeah.
Going back to the map. Okay. So when you look at this map, again, you look at this density of roads, and it's very hard to see probably in the podcast. Okay, so here is US 19 corridor. Here is the US 1 corridor. Here is Moon Lake Road. Okay, and here is Starkey Boulevard. So all of these north-souths are also in the planning for what is the necessary mobility, what should they be expanded to. Starkey will be expanded to 4. Moon Lake Road is programmed to be expanded in 26, 27. Starkey Boulevard is, let's see here, Starkey Boulevard from 27, 28, Decubulus Road 21, 22. So all these are in the 2040 plan. When we talk about 20 lanes of east-west capacity now versus 20 lanes of east-west capacity in 2040, 22, right? So you've got what your current need is, and then you've got projected growth. You also have a limited amount of money, and you also have local control versus state control. So the state controls State Road 54 and State Road 52. The county does not control an east-west road. The county does control County Road 1 north-south and Starkey Moon Lake north-south. So they get you north and south, but you still have to get out of the evacuation zone. Remember, I showed you the map. The evacuation area goes all the way to Little Road and beyond in some areas. So you've got to get out of this area and to someplace else for safety. We have shelters and refuges of last resort and other people, because we encourage people to go to friends and family, not to go to public shelters. But the safe places to be out of harm's way are on this part of the county. That mobility still has to have some east-west. So Josh mentioned Hudson Avenue. So Hudson Avenue now goes here and then back down through Hayes, and there is no interchange with the Suncoast. There is no overpass with the Suncoast. Denton Avenue up here goes across, and again, it goes to Shady Hills Road, but it does not go to the Suncoast, and there is no interchange with the Suncoast. Building an interchange is a very expensive proposition.
More expensive than the road?
More expensive than the road.
Okay.
We are currently estimating about $100 million to build the road. We won't know for sure until we go out to bid, based on the fact that we've added all this extra bridging to avoid wetland impacts in the Serenova Preserve. So all of those things are planned. There are plans for improvements on all of those roads. We're not ignoring those. We have a 15-year capital improvement plan that we balance every year. We have a 5-year capital improvement plan that you can read on our website that talks about what's funded in the 5 years. We have a 40-year plan that talks about what we think the need is going to be, but need versus money, right? It's like your own home budget. I need a new roof, but I don't have the money to do it right now, so I'm not going to do it a year or two from now. The other road that continues to come up is down here, which is Tower Road. So the Starkey Ranch development coming off of Starkey, they're building Rangeland Boulevard, which is also known as Tower Road. And then Tower Road comes up along the north side here. Now, these roads, this isn't built yet, okay? And then let's ignore the fact for a moment what's going on at Suncoast Parkway. Over here, there is a portion of Tower Road that runs through existing neighborhoods and homes. We evaluated the Tower Road alternative. It has significant problems. One is there is no interchange there. There's an interchange here. That was what was committed to in the beginning. We're trying to get to where there's an interchange to get people on the Suncoast. But there is no interchange here. There is no overpass here. We have in the 2040 plan assumed that we would build an overpass someday over Tower Road. Not that we would have an interchange with the Suncoast Parkway, but that we would have an overpass over Tower Road so that local trips from the congestion of 54 would have an alternative east-west road. But it still doesn't serve as an evacuation route for this area because they'd still have to come south to get to that, to get over here. They would not be able to access the parkway. It goes through a significant amount of private property. It's very disruptive to neighborhoods on this end. And so ultimately we explored all those alternatives.
Okay. Josh, that brings us to the end of the questions that you asked so far. What's next?
Okay. Yeah, if I could pick up where I left off.
Nice and loud.
Okay. Michelle, you had referred to the cost of this road. It's an 8-mile road. It's going from... I'm
going to repeat you because you are very quiet on the phone. He's saying you referred to the cost of the road as... Say again, Josh?
So, referring to the cost of the road from currently where Ridge Road tees into Moon Lake and to Cumulus, it's going to be an 8-mile, 2-phase road. Phase 1 is going to connect it from the current ending location of Ridge to the Veterans Expressway. It has been told to me that this is a major elevated road. And if you look at the budget, the cost of the different alternatives for the Ridge Road extension, the $102 million, which is being referred to in the paper, is an at-grade road. The partial or the major elevated are significantly more expensive than the $102 million that is being referred into the papers that I'm reading. I'm just wondering if Michelle can clarify, at grade, or is this a elevated road? Partially, is it the $135 million version or the $196 million elevated road portion?
Now, I will say I've also heard Commissioner Mariano talk about $105 million.
So here's where that comes from. When we reviewed all the alternatives, and sorry, Josh, you're not here, so you can't see this. On the central alignments, there were multiple alternatives that were looked at. One of the alternatives included a fully elevated road. That's the really, really expensive one. One of the alternatives included a fully at-grade road with just the wildlife crossings. That was alternative 7. What the county said is, wow, we really can't afford a fully elevated. And the Corps said, we really don't like the fully at grade. And so we have a modified alternative 7, which is where the 102, 105 number comes from. The modified alternative 7 adds additional bridges to the road so that the road does an undulation. So it's not fully elevated and it is not fully at grade. And what we have done is we have looked at where are the wetlands, okay, based on the preliminary jurisdictional line that was determined by the Corps of Engineers. And we have, where possible, lifted the road off of the ground through bridging before it impacts that wetland. Now, you still have some minor impacts because you have to support your bridge on structures. But what we have in this modified alternative, which is the one that we have currently proposed as being the least environmentally damaging practicable alternative, or LEDPA, which is what the regulatory words are. And notice that it's got both things in there, right? Least environmentally damaging and practicable, right? Practical to build, practical to afford, practical to accommodate. So the modified alternative 7 is what we're currently recommending. The Corps of Engineers has not selected yet, but we're recommending one that is elevated over the wetlands in the Serenova.
Okay. Josh?
All right. My follow-up question would be to that. With these designs, with the modified designs, has the county done modeling, GIS modeling of staff gauge readings out in the Serenova tract with the flooding concerns during our wet season, July to September, and then with the impact that this road's going to have through the Pittsburgh-Chascody watershed? It's a tight, narrow spot right where you're building this road. So it's kind of unique topographically. Everything to the south or northwest of this road kind of flows back into the Moon Lake Estates and then through into Water's Edge. So my concern with it, at grade, partially modified, whatever you want to call the road, is that you're going to create a bottlenecking in a very, very narrow wetland, a very narrow watershed, which is a floodplain. I had the pleasure of hiking from 52 to 54 on Wednesday.
He live streamed
and I went through this area where this road is going to be built, and it is a massive wetland. And so my concerns are flooding concerns. We know, Michelle had mentioned it, with 54 there are flooding concerns. That's the Anclote tract. Now we're going to build this major road through the Pittsburgh-Chascody watershed, and you have some major homes. Bear Creek would be the next watershed that would be affected by the backing up of this water. So I'd like to know if the county has done any modeling to show the constraints, the buildup, the at-grade elevation, above elevation, concentration of this water and where it's going to flow during our wet season.
Yes and no. So the county has not done a new watershed model, but we have used the existing watershed model, and we are very familiar with the watersheds. And some of your viewers will know that I spend a lot of time standing in front of angry residents talking about stormwater flooding. So this is a concern for me as well. I would never be a proponent of something that increased flooding for anyone. So we have evaluated, and we are very familiar. So again, if we can go to the map. So these yellow lines that you see here are the watershed basins in Pasco County. So Pasco County has 20 different watershed basins. And Josh is correct. So the county has been working through our Environmental Lands Acquisition Management Program to acquire a critical linkage along the Pittsburgh-Chascody, where its headwaters are, up near the Mazarictown Canal, Jumping Gully Preserve, through Cruz Lake, and then of course it crosses under State Road 52, so it's already constrained at 52. And then the Pittsburgh-Chascody River continues, and it goes along and joins 5 Mile Creek, and that water comes down through here, and you can see barely a little blue line, and where it crosses under Ridge Road, and it continues on and through its drainage system, ultimately under Little Road. Very familiar with the watershed, very familiar with how the water flows. From the beginning, across the Pittsburgh-Chascody floodplain, this was bridged. So even the at-grade alternative that was originally proposed had extra area on either side of the water for wildlife crossings. Now, is that area in the mapped floodplain? It is. Okay, so we are aware of that, but nothing that is being done here will constrict those flows. Nothing that is being done here will add to those flows. Any additional drainage created by the imperviousness of the highway is accommodated with retention ponds being built as a part of the highway. The drainage that exists today will be allowed to continue.
Okay. Josh?
My main concern with that is that if you're looking at the backbone of the Piscataqua River and where it flows through, and you're adding a buffer, yes, that is great. That's going to allow for wildlife corridors with the ELAMP corridors going from Terranova over to Crossbar Ranch to still continue. But during the wet season, that entire area is a riparian flood zone. It is not going to look like what it does today, what it's going to look like in September. The entire forest is built to withstand flooding, and any change in elevation is going to cause the water to run off that land in a different way. So when you build a road up through this watershed, this entire area is draining that water in a new path, and it is bottlenecking it through a larger passage, like Michelle was mentioning, but it is still a bottleneck. It is still going to have water built up behind it, and it is still going to cause concerns for neighborhoods. And I know from personal experience that, when they build these roads, I'm sure they take all this stuff into consideration. But if you look around our county, there are numerous problems with road development. Ridge Road being just recently increased from 2 to 4. Now the Oaks on the right side of the road or on the south side of the road is now in a flood zone. So things change. Even though they're making accommodations, it is going to...
Okay, I just cut Josh off.
Well, and I was going to give you the 5-minute warning because we're running out of time
I feel bad about that, and I'll have to square it with Josh later.
But let me respond to that a little bit. So a bottleneck and causing additional downstream flooding are two exactly opposite ideas. A bottleneck says I'm going to hold it up further upstream. So if I'm creating a bottleneck, then I'm going to add more water here. I'm not going to add more water downstream. So those two thoughts are in opposition. In terms of water downstream, where you would add water downstream is the increase in impervious area associated with the footprint of the road itself, where it is at grade, not where it is elevated.
Right.
And we are capturing that water into retention ponds, which we are landscaping and creating wildlife sanctuaries out of for wood storks. Now, in terms of the last thought he was going to, where we 4-laned Ridge Road and added the Oaks into a floodplain. We are evaluating the construction of Ridge Road to ensure that we did not inadvertently create a localized flooding problem. However, a localized flooding problem is very different than whether something is in the floodplain. So the floodplain is modeled by watershed level.
We're having maybe a different terminology for that. But living here forever, when Little Road north-south, Regency Square got widened and developed, and a lot of parking lots were built, Cranes Roost started having flooding problems. So that's a localized problem, but it's no less of a problem for the people that own homes there.
Right, and so we're not here to talk about the Cranes Roost problem, right. and there is a.
But you can see where it would be a concern when you put any kind of what looks like a giant dike through it.
Anytime you add imperviousness,
right.
you add water going someplace else.
Right.
In current regulations that the county has and SwiftMud has, that requirement is that you allow any water that was there before to pass through, but any additional water that you create, you have to hold your own. You cannot add any additional water to somebody else. You cannot push it to somebody else's parcel adjacent to you, and you cannot add any additional cubic feet per second if you're in an open basin and water is going downstream. The problem is the regulations evolve over time, and regulations don't apply in reverse. Yep. So if you have a new regulation today, you don't apply it to everybody who's here already. The Cranes Roost area, the Bass Lake area existed before these regulations were in place.
Right.
They have inadequate drainage in them already. And they also have a series of interconnected lakes. So the older neighborhoods do suffer more than the newer neighborhoods, because the newer neighborhoods are held to the current standard,
right.
and they have these additional precautions built into them that we've learned the need for over time. In the older neighborhoods, we are engaged in 7 different watersheds, very detailed citizen engagement meetings right now, trying to figure out what kind of stormwater improvements, what kind of retrofits do we do to help them with their flooding problems. So I am aware of those, and we are working on those. This road will not contribute to those.
Okay. So as my wrap up, first of all, this has been an outstanding briefing, and I'm actually so you're leaving this office this year, correct?
I am retiring.
When are you done?
The new county administrator starts on May 1st.
Okay.
So I'll be negotiating with the board an exit agreement. My contract is up in July 9th, but you can't have 2 commanders on the ship.
All right. Well, I just want to say that we're all clear that we have benefited greatly from your expertise in emergency management in Dade County. You were the right person to come along and do that for us when you got here. I don't know if you know that we met then because I was working for CRC, the 90-day treatment facility over across the way at Human Development Center, and so we had to plan for how to evacuate clients at that time. Okay. And so you were brand new on that job then when I met you, and I've been very impressed. This is spectacular, and I can't imagine that we're going to get anybody as knowledgeable about this as you are. I hope you will stay engaged moving forward. And
I will. This is. When I look back at the accomplishments of my 24 years in Pasco County, my decade here in the county administrator's office, only the last 4 as the county administrator, I'm very proud of many things. I have but one regret, that I have not get this permitted for the citizens of Pasco County yet. Well, and so I will stay involved. Right. I will be available, and I will attend the groundbreaking. Okay.
So all right, that's pretty confident. So thank you very much for your time. We went way over what we expected. We're at about 49 minutes on tape, probably 40 minutes of showtime. I really appreciate the thorough briefing. I apologize to Josh for dropping him there. It was well timed because we were getting we got to go signal, and we know there's a couple of other questions. I hope you won't mind if I follow up maybe an email.
My goal as your county administrator is to make sure that we are balancing public safety with growth, and we are balancing the environment with public safety and growth. And I'm always happy to answer questions and share my knowledge. And the knowledge changes and it evolves as we continue to go through this. And I think that over time, with the input of the environmentalist community and with the efforts of the regulatory agency, it's a better road than it was when it started. Okay. For the environment and for the population. And that's absolutely what you want to have come out of your regulatory process, right? You have compromise and negotiation, and maybe they didn't get everything they wanted and we didn't get everything we wanted, and we're going to spend a whole lot more to build this road, but it's a better road than it was when it started, and you got to be happy for that.
A thorough and accurate briefing. And so we're going to wrap up. I'm Greg from SolocalPasco. This is County Administrator Michelle Baker. Thank you very much for tuning in. Please share this wide. I'm sure the more people get the briefing, the more informed discussion and decision making we can do. You've given us a lot of information, and that's what we came for. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. There we go.